This is a story about one of the most embarrassing things that ever happened to me. Happened to me on my school bus. Happened to me with Mr. Anderson, my bus driver. Well, it happened like this. When I was 7, my family moved to Indianapolis, Indiana, and I started to go to Delaware Trail Elementary School, 2nd grade. Would you like to hear the Delaware Trail Elementary School song? I thought you would. It goes like this. Delaware Trails is a school for me. In Indianapolis, in the land of the free. We like to work. We like to play. We like to do things every single day. Delaware Trail School, best in the USA. Now, you learned that in kindergarten, but I moved there in 2nd grade. And the whole time I was in Delaware Trail Elementary School, I had the same bus driver. His name was Mr. Anderson. The whole time I went there. Mr. Anderson was about 4 foot 4 inches tall, about 4 foot 4 inches wide. He was one big round muscle because he was a farmer. He farmed all the time, and then he drove a bus to make money, because that's how that went, I guess. He was big and round. He was bald on top. He had silver frame glasses. He wore green work pants, green work shirt, and his big old belt. Shoes looked like he'd been born in them. I don't know how he saw over the wheel of the bus. He wasn't that big. Holding his arms up high over his head and holding onto the steering wheel. I don't know how he saw over the wheel, but somehow he did. And for 5 years in a row, Mr. Anderson was Indiana State School Bus Driver of the Year. We knew that, 'cause there they were on the ceiling of his bus. Those blue ribbons up on the aquamarine ceiling of the bus. He'd open up the door, get on. We'd climb on the bus, kaboom, 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 and there they'd be up above his head. Indiana State School Bus Driver of the Year, 5 blue ribbons. How'd he get to be Indiana State School Bus Driver of the Year? How does that happen? We used to speculate about it. Does he show up some Saturday morning in a high school parking lot and drive between orange pylons? Is there some kid getting on the bus in secret with a clipboard making notes? No. That's not how you get to be Indiana State School Bus Driver of the Year. You get to be Indiana State School Bus Driver of the Year 5 years in a row because you don't need a rear view mirror. Have you ever noticed how bus drivers drive? School bus drivers? Just look at them next time you get on a school bus. You'll see. Did they look out the front window? No. They're looking up in the rear view mirror because they've made a decision. Which is more dangerous? The tractor-trailer truck approaching a 55 miles ahead on, or the 47 kids behind him in the back of the bus? It's a no-brainer. They're looking up at the rearview mirror. They've made their decision. Mr. Anderson never looked in the rearview mirror. The visor was flipped up. He didn't need to because he had eyes in the back of his head. I found out one day by accident because I'd been to the school store. We used to love to go to the school store. The school store was in the cafetorium. That's the auditorium, the gymnasium, and the cafeteria all rolled into one. You'd eat lunch there at lunchtime, and then in the afternoon on the relay races, you'd slip on the green beans that you dropped on the floor during lunchtime. But there in the cafetorium, there was a little room with a Dutch door, and every morning, the top of that Dutch door opened up, and the school store was open. I used to love to go to the school store because it was doing something for yourself in school. It was an odd thing to do. You'd go down to the school store, you'd say, "Can I go to the school store?" Your teacher would say, "Yes." You'd say, "Great, I'm going to the school store. I love it." You'd run down the hallway by yourself without anybody telling you what to do. You'd get to the school store and you'd buy stuff. They sold things there, great things like pencils, orange pencils with Delaware Trail Elementary School printed on them, and pads of paper, and crayons, and erasers. They had these erasers. They were called Claro erasers. They were pink square erasers. They cost a nickel. And they put something in these erasers. They don't do it anymore. They stopped. But they did when I was growing up, some additive in these erasers. So as soon as you got one of these erasers in your hand started to vibrate, and it moved back and forth at a greater and greater frequency until finally you just had to let it go. It wasn't your fault. You had to let it go, and they don't put that stuff in them anymore. I found out one day by accident about Mr. Anderson because I'd been to the school store that morning. I was riding home on his school bus. I reached in my pocket. I discovered I had one of those erasers. I pulled it out. My hands started to shake back and forth. I said, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? I got to get rid of this thing somehow. I said, oh, look at that. 2 seats up on the other side of the aisle, one of my friends. That eraser was wagging back and forth in my hand faster and faster. My hand went up to my ear. I was just about to let go, and Mr. Anderson said, "Put it down, Billy, or dead meat." How did he know? The visor was flipped up. He wasn't looking in the rearview mirror. He knew because he had eyes in the back of his head. That's how you got to be Indiana State School Bus Driver of the Year. Mr. Anderson had only one rule on the school bus. I remember driving into school that first day I went to Delaware Trails. He gave it to us when he pulled in the schoolyard. He left the engine of the bus running. He got off that big fat seat of his. He had that big fat seat. We had the skinny hard ones. He got up, turned around, engine running. He said, "Boys and girls, my name's Mr. Anderson. I'm your bus driver. This is my bus 150. I only got one rule on the school bus. No yelling." Now, let me explain to you the sociology of the school bus in case you have forgotten. There was a certain seating pattern on our school bus. Seating pattern designed and implemented by the 6th graders. It was a kindergarten through 6th grade school. The 1st graders, kindergartners, 1st graders, 2nd graders, 3rd graders, they all sat in the front of the bus. The 4th, 5th, and finally the 6th graders sat in the very far back. The coolest of the cool were the 6th graders. They sat in the back. They were the coolest of cool by definition, their own definition. Don't be a 1st grader and be walking back down the aisle to see what it's like back there, or you'll find out and you won't like it. And the coolest 6th grader of them all was leaned against the back window in the back seat of the bus. And when Mr. Anderson said, "No yelling," that kid rolls his eyes and says, "Yeah, right. Listen to the farmer." Mr. Anderson looked up through those glasses of his and he says, "I heard that, son." And the kid says, "Yeah, right." That afternoon, we're driving home. Mr. Anderson's up there holding on to the wheel over his head. Everybody's sitting in the same exact seat. Those seats that were assigned. That coolest kid of all is sitting in the very back seat where he's supposed to sit. He sees somebody he knows outside the window. He leans over the kid in front of him. He does those little doohickeys on the window. For some reason, they work. He pushes the window down. He leans his head out the window, goes, "Yo, Mr. Anderson," pulls the bus over, puts out the blinker. Blink, 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 blink. The cars stop moving. Blink, 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 blink. The trucks stop moving. Blink, 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 blink. The airplane stopped moving. Blink, 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 blink. The wind stops blowing. The birds stop singing. Just the sound of the blink, 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 blink. The engine, and Mr. Anderson, as he got up. Somebody yelled. We all went, "Ah!" And Mr. Anderson walked down the aisle of the bus. The bus rocking back and forth until he got about 4 or 5 seats away from the kid. He stopped. He said, "You yelled and I told you not to." And the kid stared at Mr. Anderson, his eyes bugging out, his mouth wide open, and he said, "Ah!" Mr. Anderson reached out with this huge ham hock of a forearm, grabbed the kid by the t-shirt right there in the chest, lifted him up over his head, turned back, wheeling on his heels, walked back down the aisle of the bus, cleaning the roof of the bus with the back of the kid's t-shirt, turned at the front of the bus, holding the kid pinned to the ceiling, said, "No yelling!" Opened up the utility box under his seat, put the kid in there, blank. He was gone. This was very impressive. We rode into school that day, totally silent, our mouths stuck open. A couple days later, kid's little brother gets on the bus. He says, Mr. Anderson, Mr. Anderson, my mom, she's my mom, and Mr. Anderson, my mom wants my brother back, okay? You wouldn't yell like that, would you? Nuh-uh. Good. Mr. Anderson opened up the utility box, pulled the kid out. He was kind of crumbled up, so Mr. Anderson blew him back up again. Looked at him and said, "No yelling." Kid stared at Mr. Anderson, eyes bugged open, mouth wide open. Kid didn't speak for the rest of 6th grade. There were a lot of 6th grade teachers trying to get their kids transferred to Mr. Anderson's route for just one day. Just one day, they pleaded with Mr. Anderson. Take this kid for just one day. So he had a rule, and he kept it. But don't forget who we were. We were kids. We had a job to do. Our job was to explore the gray area between yes and no. There was no yelling. But what exactly did that mean? When did talking become yelling? At what point? And we explored trying to find that line, and we made a very interesting discovery. Mr. Anderson would not let us yell, but he would let us sing. And not only would he let us sing, he would let us sing at the top of our lungs. We couldn't understand this. We couldn't tell the difference between a kid singing at the top of their lungs and a kid yelling. It sounded the same to us. We'd get into school, our throats would be bleeding. We'd been singing at the top of our lungs. We'd all be checking into the nurse's office with bleeding throats. Everybody on bus 150 showing up at the nurse's office before school started. But as long as Mr. Anderson perceived some tonality, some sense of rhythm or meter or melody, not only would he let us sing, but Mr. Anderson would sing along with us. And so, we brought the stupidest songs we could to the bus, hoping to find and get his goat. But all that time, we never found it. And this is the stupidest song we could find. My friend Keith brought it to the bus from Camp Gnawbone. We sat on the bus and we sang it at the top of our lungs. As I was walking down the street, a billboard caught my eye. The advertisements on it would make you laugh and cry. The sign was torn and shattered from the storm the night before. The wind and rain had done its work, and this is what I saw. Smoke Coca-Cola cigarettes, drink Wrigley's spearmint beer. Kennel ration dog food keeps your wife's complexion clear. Chocolate-covered mothballs, they always satisfy. Brush your teeth with Lifebuoy soap and watch the suds go by. Yeah, we sang that song, the whole rest of it. 1st grade, 2nd grade, 3rd grade, 4th grade, 5th grade, 6th grade, all the way through elementary school. By the time we got to 6th grade, we knew what our job was. Because every year, they told us, you wait till you get to next year, you'll find out. They told us that in 2nd grade. They told us that in 3rd grade. You wait till you get to 4th grade, then you'll really find out. They told us in 4th grade, you wait till you get to 5th grade, then you'll really find out. They told us in 5th grade, you wait till you get to 6th grade. And in 6th grade, they really told us, you wait till next year. One day in 6th grade, we were all led into the cafetorium. All the 6th graders sat there on the floor, and the principal came out, and he said to us,
"Boys and girls, we hope you've enjoyed your stay here at Delaware Trail Elementary School. And now, we'd like to talk to you about
Northview Junior High School. Then you'll really find out what it's about, and you'll be sorry you weren't nicer to us here." And we went, "Oh no!" And we began to hear stories about Northview Junior High School. 14 million kids in the school. You'd go there and you disappeared. You just became a number. Every once in a while, you'd open up a locker, you'd find a skeleton of some kid that had been put in there 7 years before and forgotten about. They never found him again. And they started to tell us stories about all the work we were going to have to do and how we were going to be eaten alive. And they took us on a field trip. They put us on a school bus, and Mr. Anderson wasn't even the bus driver. And they took us to Northview Junior High School. And we walked down these huge hallways that stretched forever with thousands of lockers on each side. How are we going to remember the combination to our locker? And I was walking down the hallway wondering how I was going to survive when some huge 8th grader walked by. He saw me. He yanked me out of line. He shoved me up against the locker. He said, "Hey, kid, next year you're my lunch." I said, "Okay." And my friends and I began to plot and plan about how we were going to survive Northview Junior High School. We decided there were 2 main tactics. The first was to get the right clothes. There was only one store that had the right clothes. It was called Rods. And you had to go to the store, and all your clothes had to come from it. I knew it was very expensive, but I went to my mom and I said, "Mom, would you like me to survive next year when I go to 7th grade? If you would, let's go shopping." She couldn't believe I wanted to buy clothes. I never wanted to buy clothes before. But when she got me to the store and we saw the prices on the clothes, everything neatly stacked, we wandered around the store. I had my mind on getting 6 pairs of pants and 7 shirts and 3 sweaters and 7 different belts and a big, huge wallet that you stuck in the back pocket. We wandered around the store looking at the price of everything. My mom came to a circle of belts there in the middle of the store, and she looked at me and she said, "Well, Bill, I guess we could buy a belt." "A belt, Mom?" I said, "A belt's not going to do it. I got to have more than that. They'll hang me with a belt." She said, "Let's start off with a belt." I said, "A belt?" She bought me a belt. I was going to go to junior high school with just a belt on. There was no way I could survive. And so I knew I had to practice the other tactic. The other tactic was being invisible. We decided the way to survive junior high school was to do nothing that attracted attention. And so I practiced in the mirror. I learned to stand sideways so I wouldn't be noticed. I learned to slump my shoulders. I learned to mumble any reply that I gave when someone asked me a question. I learned to be invisible. Still, when the time came for me to go to junior high school on that first day, I was terrified. I put on the clothes I had, and I put on the one decent thing I knew everybody would notice, that one belt from Rods, and I walked down the street. I walked down the street to the bus stop, the same place where I went to elementary school, but now it was filled with junior high school students. 8th and 9th graders, all bigger than me, all glaring down at me. These kids that I used to play kickball and kick the can with, but now they were bigger and they didn't talk. And I stood at one corner of that bus stop thinking, I'm never gonna make it. I practiced being invisible, hoping they wouldn't notice me and I wouldn't make it to the bus at all. When I heard the roar of the bus that was going to take me to junior high school, coming down the street, and I looked down the street, and there I saw it. It was bus 150. It was Mr. Anderson. There he was, his hands up high on the steering wheel. He pulled his bus up right in front of me, and he opened up the door. He said, "Get on, William." I said, "Mr. Anderson, you're going to 7th grade too." He said, "Get on the bus. You sit anywhere you want." I said, "Great." I got on the bus, and I walked down 3 seats, and I sat right there in the front. I thought, oh, I'm going to make it, because Mr. Anderson's going to make sure I get to school safe. He's somebody I know. And every once in a while he was driving, he'd turn around and he'd give me a wink in the eye, and I thought, maybe I'll make it. And I made it through the first day. The teachers called my name, and sometimes I didn't answer. They didn't seem to care. They just went on with the list. Nobody had noticed me. I survived that first day. Nothing terrible happened to me. No one made terrible fun of me. No one cornered me. That 8th grader who had become a 9th grader didn't find me. I didn't become his lunch. I got on the bus. Mr. Anderson said, "How you doing, Bill?" I said, "I'm okay." He said, "Good. You sit back there where you want." I sat in the same seat. And the next day it was the same. Mr. Anderson's smile greeting me as I got on the bus every morning and in the afternoon. And he waved to me as he drove off. And by the end of that week, I began to think, hey, yo, I can do this. I'm a junior high school kid. I'm all right, as long as nobody notices me. And that Friday afternoon, I got on the bus. I remember the bus was half empty because of all the different athletic teams and the cheerleading teams and the chess club and everybody that was meeting that day. So I had a seat to myself. I sat there on the seat. I stretched my legs out on it. I leaned my back up against the window, looked out the other window on the other side of the bus, thinking, yeah, this is it. And I was looking around the bus as we were headed home when I looked to the front of the bus and I saw something that I had never seen before. Mr. Anderson's visor was flipped down, and I could see the rearview mirror, and Mr. Anderson's eyes were on me. I looked at him, he looked at me, and I looked down. I looked up again, and he was still looking at me, and I thought maybe my feet aren't supposed to be on the seat, so I took my feet off. I looked up again another moment, and he was looking at me. I looked down and up again, and he was still looking, and there was a smile on his face. And then I heard him say, "Hey, Bill, what do you say we sing some of those songs we used to sing in elementary school bus? What do you say? How about that Billboard song?" And all those 7th and 8th and 9th grade faces looked at me. And Keith, who had brought the Billboard song and who was sitting in the seat in front of me, leaned over the seat and he said, "Yeah, Bill, why don't you sing with a fat farming bus driver?" And I looked down at the floor and I could feel my face turn redder and redder until I thought my head would burst. I could feel sweat dripping down my back. I looked up, and I could see Mr. Anderson still looking at me in the mirror, waiting for me to sing. I wanted to say, "Mr. Anderson, I can't do that here. Are you crazy?" But I didn't say that. I just looked down at the floor. And that day when I got off the bus, I walked behind somebody. And I was just at the right angle so that when I got off the bus, I didn't quite get a chance to say goodbye to Mr. Anderson. And you know what? It was like that the next morning when I got on the bus. I was right behind somebody, and before I knew it, I was in my seat, and I hadn't had a chance to say good morning to Mr. Anderson. And it was like that the day after that, and the day after that. But every time it came for me to get on the bus or off the bus, what I wanted to do was stop and say, "Mr. Anderson, don't you get it? I can't do that anymore." But I knew he wouldn't understand. And I survived. I was invisible. I got through that fall and winter and spring. That summer, I was going to be an 8th grader. The next year, I felt like an 8th grader, and I was acting like an 8th grader. I learned I didn't need to spend a lot of time with my parents or brothers, which is why it was so miserable when we got back into the car one Sunday afternoon after church in our ties and jackets, and I was ripping my tie off and pulling my jacket off in the car, and the car was not air conditioned. It was about 95 degrees, and my mother turned to us and she said, "I have a surprise." And I thought, oh no. She said, "I don't think we spend enough time together as a family, and we're going to do that today." I said, "No, you're wrong, Mom. We spend entirely too much time together as a family. I don't need to spend any time together as a family." She said, "We're going to go right now on a family trip." I said, "I have my tie on." She said, "You can take it off." I said, "But what about my shorts? What about playing basketball? What about going swimming?" She said, "We're going to spend some time together as a family, and we're going to enjoy it." She said, we're going to go pick out a Christmas tree at a Christmas tree farm. I said, Mom, Christmas is 17 years away. It's the middle of the summer. She said, we're going there. We'll pick out a tree. We'll spend some time together as a family. And we all groaned, and we drove and drove for miles and miles of countryside, with thousands of acres of farm on either side, headed to some Christmas tree there in the middle of July. Finally, we pulled into this little parking lot. The doors flew open. We all climbed out. My mother said, let's go see what we can find. And they all trooped off, but not me, 'cause I was 14, and I leaned against the car, trying to pretend I had just arrived there from some other planet, and I didn't belong to the dopey family that was out picking Christmas trees in the middle of the summer. What if one of my friends came by and found me picking a Christmas tree in July? I was leaning against the car, wishing I was anywhere but there, when I heard the roar of a tractor coming down the road, and I turned and looked. Coming down the road in road gear, an International Harvester tractor, and perched there on the seat was Mr. Anderson, and he took the tractor out of gear. He lowered the idle and he said, hey, William, what are you doing out here, picking a Christmas tree? And I said, no, I just out here, You here with your family? No, I don't know where they are, I said. And then he turned the engine down even more. He said, nice day, isn't it? I said, yeah. And I was remembering all the times I had walked by him, trying to think of something else to say or explain myself when he said, want to go for a ride? Sure, I said. What's better than being with my family? Mr. Anderson reached down that huge forearm of his. He pulled me up onto the seat, and I got one cheek on the seat there, and he turned that big tractor around, put it into road gear, doing 25 miles an hour down that country road, till about a half mile down the road, he turned. He shut the engine off. He said, look, there it is. First I looked in Mr. Anderson's eyes. I saw him gazing off in the distance. Then I turned to see what he was pointing to. And there I saw thousands and thousands of acres of corn, all about 4 or 5 feet tall. It was a windy, hot day. The corn was a bright green, and when the wind blew, the leaves turned over and I could see the silver on their other side, and then would go back to green and then silver, like waves in the ocean passing across the field. He said, that's mine. I said, that's yours. He said, yeah, that's what I do. I'm a farmer. Oh, I said. Want to go for a ride around it? Sure. He turned the engine on, put it in gear. We started going around the road, around that field. We got about halfway around. Must have been 1.5 miles, 2 miles away when he shut the engine off. And he said, now listen, I'll take you all the way rest around if you sing with me. What? I know, he said. You won't sing anywhere else, but you can sing here. And I looked around, and there was nobody else there. Just me. I wanted to say, Mr. Anderson, I want to explain to you about the bus. I don't want to... But he said, wait. I know. You're not going to sing on the bus anymore. I know that. I said, but he said, no, listen. It's okay. You don't have to sing on the bus. But if you want to get home, you got to sing with me here. Nobody but me, an old farmer. They can't hear you. I looked around. He was right. There were no 8th and 9th graders. It was just Mr. Anderson and his tractor and all that corn. And I said, sure, let's sing it. And we did. On his tractor, singing at the top of our lungs. Nobody could hear us. As I recovered from my shock, I went upon my way. I only got a block or so, and then to my dismay, another billboard caught my eye like the one before. The wind and rain had done its work, and this is what I saw. Take your next vacation in a brand new Frigidaire. Learn to play piano in your winter underwear. Simonize your babies with Hershey candy bars. Texaco, the beauty cream, is used by all the stars. Doctors say that babies should smoke until they're 3. People over 35 take baths and Lipton tea. And if you want to make this world a better place to stay, buy a record of this song and throw it far away.